Hey folks, this is Matt Hawkins, owner of Ridge Supply. I'm here with Jordan Spoon and our special guest today, Colin Gay. This is the Be the Bright podcast. We're recording live on YouTube, Zoom, and Spotify and all your podcast formats. Colin, welcome.
Thank you.
We've taken a big break and we've got through the holidays and some work drama and lots of shipping and et cetera. And we're back on the horse. And we've got our special guest today is a longtime friend of mine. And Colin goes by the moniker Ridestreak. If you haven't heard or follow him, you should follow him on Instagram at Ridestreak and on Strava as well. And I just wanted to have you on here. You've been a longtime Arsenal member and a close friend of the brand, and we've known each other for a while. So tell us a little bit about who the heck is Ridestreak and who the heck is Colin?
Well, I'm a teacher. I teach at Woodbury Forest, which is where Matt and I went to school. I teach math there. Algebra 1 right now, so I got the young bucks trying to get them in line. It's been challenging online. Not always easy. I also have been coaching a long time. Been coaching since 997, coach football, wrestling, lacrosse, and then recently I started coaching mountain biking at school, which has been a real blessing there because it's most of my miles are on the road, but getting a mountain bike is also very fun, and it's nice to get to work with young people and help them learn to love cycling. I came to cycling obviously later in life. I remember there was a time when Matt was kind of living on my couch. Maybe not exactly, but you were living together and you would go out and ride and I'd be like, man, what is that guy wearing? Lycra, and I was like, I can't stand that stuff. And then obviously I love it now and I understand why people wear it. And I certainly embrace that being the bright, and you don't have to be obnoxious, but you certainly want to be seen and you want to be a little unique. Yeah. And that's kind of why I love the brand. But I guess that's kind of who I am in the short version.
Yeah, well, and I'll fill in a little bit on that. So Colin is talking about Woodbury Forest, and it's an all-male boarding school in Central Virginia, and we went there together in the very early 90s. And so it's been over 30 years since we met. And we were good friends in high school and stayed pretty close as adults. And then somewhere along the line, and we would be I would say we were in touch, frequently, but there would be months that would go by where we wouldn't chat or whatever. But I got a call from you, and I'll never forget it, but I got a call from you. I don't remember the exact month, but I know it was like in the fall, and you gave me the old call that everyone gives to the one guy they know that rides bikes, which was, hey, I got to get a bike. What do you suggest? And that call was actually, you had already started this process of riding. How did that start? Take me back to when you started actually riding bikes.
I guess the spark kind of started in the summer. I was down at Ocean Isle, and I borrowed a friend of mine's bike, and I rode down the beach road there, and I thought I hadn't done this in a long, long time. And this is pretty cool. And then I didn't really think about it for months and months and months. And I was at a point in my life where I was not in good shape. And for me, that was it was real difficult to deal with. I was used to being in shape. I was an athlete in high school, and being a coach, asking guys to do things that maybe I couldn't do because I wasn't in good enough shape. It was weighing on me a lot. And I decided I needed to do something about it. I wanted to do something about it. And I talked to the coach, mountain biking coach at Woodbury, Nolan Lavoie, and asked if I could borrow a bike because I didn't want to be that guy that had a bike and didn't ride it. So I didn't want to buy a bike. And I borrowed a GT Avalanche. I think maybe 3 years worked. And I think it was it was 2014. It was November, late November. No, take it back. It was early November 2014. And I went out and I rode, and I had boxer shorts and mesh shorts and like a long sleeve shirt. And I was completely unprepared for what was going on. And I started riding that bike and I thought, this is something I don't dislike. I enjoy this. And before then I ran to get in shape, but it was one of those things where I'd wake up and I would dread going to the gym and I dread going on the treadmill. And there's nothing wrong with running, but for me, it wasn't something that I found a passion for at that point in my life. Earlier I'd had, but at that point I hadn't. So I started riding. I said, well, I think I could do this every day. And I said, well, I'm gonna ride 30 days in a row and see if I can do that. And then I got to 30 and I said, well, I could probably do this for 100 days. That seemed kind of ridiculous. And then I got to 100 and I said, well, I might as well go to 1,000. And then after 1,000, it made sense to go to 10,000. And I know that's a pretty big explosion there, but that was kind of how
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. You're just multiplying by 10 every time. It's okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how my mind works. And you asked me to kind of get you up to speed on what happened before we had that conversation. So I'd ridden this GT Avalanche mountain bike all over campus. My wife had bought me some lights to kind of ride when it was dark. And I started, my initial rides were really short, but then they started getting a little bit longer. And I said, well, I need to get a bike. I want to get a bike of my own. I don't want to ride this bike anymore. And when I talked to you, we talked about Specialized and we talked about some other things. And I think I went to a Cannondale 29er lefty, and that's where we arrived. But that bike didn't last very long just because it was time to get a road bike.
Yeah.
And the first day I'd ridden a road bike was actually the first day I test drove one. And I bought it. And I brought it home that day and it was blowing like 20 miles an hour. And I thought, what in the world have I done? But that's kind of what got me to call you and say, hey, man, I've been riding. Yeah. I know that was a shock to you.
Yeah, well, and you probably don't remember this, but when this happened, I was actually recovering from my accident. And so I wasn't actually riding. I don't think I started riding until November 10th or something of that, that time is when I went out for my first ride. It may have been the 20th. I can't remember, but so I was on crutches and in the house and couldn't. And so that's what was also really cool for me, because I was like, whoa, Colin's riding his bike. This is awesome, And so, yeah, it was wild. One of the things that's awesome about you, you're one of the smartest people I know. And you're also you would ask me for advice, but you're smart enough to not listen to what I say all the time, which is also cool. So I'll be like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And you'll be like, yeah, okay. And then you'd go do whatever it was that you were going to do, which was fine. And you have created this, you're a bike guy now. You're 100% a bike guy, and you have to be because you do it every single day. But back then, you didn't know the first thing about what you were doing. Do you remember when you told me that you wanted to ride 100 miles? Do you remember this conversation when you called me?
I do.
I think you were in Target and you called me and you're like, hey, I want to ride 100 miles tomorrow. What should I do? And I was like, oh boy. And I was like, what are you eating or drinking? And you're like, I don't eat or drink when I ride. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is bad news bears, buddy. Because you were dieting while you were riding right back then, right?
Yeah, I had a goal. My main motivation was getting in shape. And I was way overweight. And I just kind of locked it down and decided it was time to change. And I was trying to be under 1,000 calories a day and riding. And that's not easy to do. Obviously I don't ride that fast, but, it was certainly a balance, trying to be able to work out and kind of balance that. And I just hadn't been drinking on the bike, which is ridiculous. I still don't eat that much. If it's under a 4-hour ride, I don't eat on a ride. Yeah. If it's over 4 hours, I absolutely do bring lots of food. And I've taken, I know that you should be eating something every hour and drinking a bottle every hour. And that's, I generally go with that unless it's too cold to carry a bottle and then you don't.
Right.
But yeah, I do remember back then, because I didn't know at all what I was doing. You sent me a kit and some leg warmers and some glasses, and it was like, a game changer because like,
You weren't in a t-shirt.
well, my tears wouldn't freeze on my face when I was riding anymore. It was a big deal with some Tifosi sunglasses, and it was such a game changer. And then you also sent me some knee warmers that I put down on my calves, and you were like, "Man, that's not how you." I sent you a picture, and you're like, "Yeah, sorry to tell you, that's not how you wear those." And I was like, "Well, I guess no one ever see that picture, but thanks." But it's really funny what you don't know, because when I bought my first chamois, I was like, "You wear, underwear with this?" And the guy was like, "No." I was like, all right, good.
Well,
Good thing to know.
that's what's crazy too, is you learned the ropes on your own, like kind of, you weren't riding with people for a while. So you're really just riding by yourself, and not that any of that stuff really matters unless it's like uncomfortable or, being detrimental. It's not really about what you're wearing. You've developed this thing over time where, like, I mean, you're all function, you know what I mean? Like, there's no like fashion in what it is you're trying to do when you're riding at 3 a.m, like it's function and only function, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about equipment, you want it to last.
Yeah.
You want it to be warm, and you don't want to. You got to be able to have a backup, because that's part of the thing that's a stressor. Is like, I can't have a situation where my lights don't work, because if you're out there and the light doesn't work, all of a sudden you're in the dark. What do you do?
Yeah.
And that's also, I'm coming back to teach, so I don't have there's not a window there that's very easy. It's like I've got to get back and shower and get to class, or people are gonna have some kids out there not knowing math. But functionality is definitely important. But during the summers, I get to ride during the day, and I got some socks that look pretty snazzy. And I always like to accent with those. And I like the colors of kits, and I like to have that be a part of individuality. But in the morning when it's dark outside, you just kind of get in a picture like this, and that's all you get.
Well, I think that's one of the things I find most interesting, because I've talked to Matt about it, is kind of your planning and your prep, and like how you figure out what you're going to wear the next morning and how far out you're looking at that, how much prepping it involves. So what is kind of the, I guess, day into early morning, night into early morning planning that you do for the ride the next morning?
Okay. So normally during the school year, I have to get up pretty early, because there's not really a window. When I'm teaching and then coaching, there's not a window to ride. So my window is 4 to 6 in the morning. So generally I get up about 3:25, and I can be on the bike just before 4 o'clock, which means it's a night ride for Strava, which is always nice. But kind of
you're probably leading the whatever international night riding thing.
Ride,
yeah, you're probably leading that. If
nobody on
there's a
Strava has
leaderboard
anymore. Yeah.
Well, there's really no reason to be up that early at all. But there's also something kind of peaceful about it. But the process is generally, I kind of have my clothing rack downstairs, stuff dries on, I bring it up, I get it set before I go. Obviously I got to have my lights charged. And I got a bunch of those lights, got my helmet light charged, my bike light charged, the Garmin's got to be working. And usually I'm going to bed pretty early, because I'm getting up pretty early. So I try to be in bed before 10. If I'm on duty at school, that doesn't happen. I'm usually getting in bed about 1. So that's a pretty short time to be sleeping. But I need to know kind of the main keys are, is there going to be ice? Because really the only bad ride, in my opinion, is ice. I don't care if it's raining and it's 33. I don't care if it's 105 degrees. To me, if there's no ice involved, I'm going to be okay. If there's ice involved, to me, that's a scary part of it. So a lot of times I'm trying to think about, okay, what's the temp going to be tomorrow? And then is it raining or not? And then if there's a chance of snow, can I avoid it? Last week I got home from duty at about 12:30 and it was going to snow. So I went right out and rode then, because it meant I could get in before it snowed, and it meant I could ride my road bike, or gravel bike, rather than riding my mountain bike, which mainly meant it was going to take less time.
Yeah.
So kind of got my kit and stuff set up in the bathroom, get up, get dressed while my wife's still sleeping, get out to the to the shop, and get going. I do double record my rides. I use my Wahoo Roam, and then I also use my phone just in case. That might be a story for later on in the podcast, but I've had some rides that got corrupted, and my mind is such that you kind of have to have it recorded, or it doesn't, or it's not there. So I want to have a representation of it. Part of what I'm doing is I'm kind of recording it on Strava to kind of document it, and I'm also kind of documenting it through photos on Instagram, just to kind of people see what's going on.
Yeah. Talking about some of that redundancy, do you carry an extra set of lights in case your lights go out while you're out there, or do you just make sure everything's charged and hope it lasts?
So I've shifted my lights. When I first started, I'm still using the same brand. It's a brand called Bright Eyes, and they're not very expensive, but they're very good. And I had basically the first setup I had was it had like a block battery that I had to strap on, and then when I had to strap to my helmet and down to my back, and I rode those for years. And I would generally carry an extra backup battery in there. And then probably last year I switched to something that was an internal battery and didn't have an external battery. And since I have two, I generally don't carry a backup battery. And maybe I should, a backup light, maybe I should, but generally speaking, I use those for a good amount of time. And then I just say, okay, this might be about to go, and I replace it. So I'm kind of front loading, replacing that. And I keep backups in the shop. I keep backup pretty much everything in the shop, because something breaks, I have to have it, a wheel, a free up body, chains, pedals. Whenever I go somewhere, I have to kind of be prepared for something to break, because I can only fix it so much. And a lot of times shops don't have it, or they aren't open.
Yeah.
So
I don't know many bike shops that are open at 3 o'clock in the morning if you realize something's broken.
No.
Tell us, we know, but tell the folks who are listening what this streak actually is. So what is it that you're doing every day? So
the goal is to ride outside 30 miles minimum for 10,000 days. And obviously riding more than that is fine. I have days when we go longer, but 30 miles is the minimum. And right now I'm at 2,287. So it's nothing, right? I got so much longer.
You're almost
to go.
a quarter way there. That's pretty impressive.
You're
a little shy of a year being a quarter way there.
Something that people don't understand when you say that, because I've had this discussion with my wife, and she knows you and she knows you're doing this, but people who don't ride don't understand what that is. And if you do ride, and this is why lights and Garmin's and Wahoos and all this stuff is important, because you can't call somebody and bail you out of the ride when the weather's bad. You have to do the 30 miles. You can do the 30 miles in more than one section. Like you could stop in theory, but you really haven't done that. You've done pretty much continuous 30-mile rides or more. And there's never, ever, 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 ever a day off. And people don't comprehend that. Yes, it's a streak and that sounds whatever. But when you start to pile all these rides, these small individual days on top of each other, I know that you have just seen an ungodly amount of challenges to get those rides in. And I know we've talked about it since day one. I was telling you when you first started this, I was like, man, you gotta have a backup plan. If this doesn't work out, and if you get it, what if you break your collarbone? What are you gonna do? And you've been very fortunate. You've had a couple crashes, but none of them kept you off the bike the next day, which is awesome. But what's the biggest thing that's happened to you that really put the streak in jeopardy so far?
That's interesting. The way my mind works is I work much better with rules. If I know it's not if I'm going to ride, it's when I'm going to ride. It makes it real simple for me. It's not take a day off. It's just you're going to do it. And surprisingly enough, there have not been many days, because to me, the hardest part is putting your foot down. when I get up out of bed, once my foot's on the ground, riding the bike is not hard. That's the fun part. I mean, like I said, unless there's ice on the ground, that's a fun thing to do, to ride your bike. And obviously you can put yourself in a pain cave and ride harder and faster and ride mountains. And there are times when I've hurt, but still riding a bike in itself is a fun thing to do. So that part's not the hard part. But I guess the only real time that something was in jeopardy was I had a big argument with my wife, and I was feeling really bad about it. And it was one of those things where there's an emotional side to exercising and to committing to something. And, you know, a lot of times the actual act helps you feel better, but there's sometimes it's your emotions that stop you from going out and doing it and starting it. And that one day was the closest I came to just not riding. And it sounds silly, but
Yeah.
you know, there are lots of things that could stop me from riding. Like you said, there are injuries that could happen, things that could stop me, but it's not going to be because it was too cold or it's too wet or I was too tired or I was too sick. Those things aren't going to stop me. And I didn't let, you know, being kind of having that argument stop me. I worked past it, and ultimately it was a good day. It was a long day in the saddle. That was kind of why it was challenging, because I went out and we did like 130 or 140, and I was trying to do more, but the whole time I was wrestling.
Was this some Chicago trip?
No, this was just a Somerset kind of
Okay.
Madison Orange tour.
Okay.
Chicago trip, I didn't have any arguments, which is nice. A lot of support there, a lot of love and help from those guys.
You've done some crazy things, and you've had some big days. You've had some big trips, and stacked up some big rides. And one thing I've always, and I've known you for a long time, I tell people this, and I know some really intense people. I really do. Like, I know some of my best friends are super, super intense. Mm-hmm. You are the most intense person I have ever met. And that doesn't mean you're aggro and like, that's not it. It's just that you are the kind of guy, like, if I said tomorrow, hey, we're going to go ride 200 miles, you'd be like, okay, let's do it. And it wouldn't even cross your mind. Yeah, you'd say it was hard and you would be a little bit worried, but I know you'd finish it. And we did this ride, Alpine Loop. Was that when you were there, Jordan? Was that the year?
No, that was the year before. Yeah,
it was 2018. We did Alpine Loop together, and you'd never done Alpine Loop, right? That year? That was the first year?
I think it was the second year we did.
Okay. So we did the big ride. It's 107 miles or something. We crushed it. We had fun. We rode together with, I think Kyle and Lee and you and me. And we finished it, and you drove home. And then me and Lee were at the Olive Garden, like munging on dinner at like 9:30, and you texted and you're like, my ride is corrupt, it won't upload. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll just give you my file. And because we rode exactly together the whole time, I was like, it's fine. And you were like, okay. And by the time I got my laptop out in the van, got it messed around, you called me, and what was it you were doing? Tell this story, because this is crazy time.
Well, I'm not sure why that day. Alpine Loop was hard. It's a hard ride. That year was the year they took out Reddish. So it was the first year they didn't have that. And that day for me, I don't know why it was so hard, but it was harder than normal for me. It was a Sunday.
Always hard, dude. It's a really hard ride.
It is.
That ride was brutal, and we didn't even do the mixed surface version in 2019.
It took us like what, 7.5 hours or something, right? Like it's a long day. Like
it was a lot, but somehow that day to me, physically it was a lot, but emotionally that day I was having a tough day. I don't know why it was, but we got done. It was great to see you guys. I always like riding there. It's a fun event and it's a challenge. And then I drove home over the mountain to Harrisonburg, and I was, getting up in the morning to ride. So I knew, okay, I got to get my stuff ready to go, get everything charged, reset, because it's Monday morning. And I went to upload my ride, and it said that I'd ridden like 2,000 miles in like 3 hours. It was one of those things where you get this like, and Garmin just says you just rode to South Africa and that. And I don't know where my mind sometimes goes to a place where it's just like, this is what's got to happen. And I'd had some corrupt files happen before, and I think maybe DC Rainmakers got some fixed files that will change.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a time zone issue, but they're pretty easy, and it just wouldn't fix it. It wasn't going to happen. And the only thing I could think is I don't want to have this be the one that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I knew I was there. I knew I wrote it. I knew you knew I wrote it. I knew I could upload your ride. But somehow in that moment, because of how emotional I was, I said, I just can't do that. So I got on the bike at 10 o'clock and I rode, got my 30 miles in. And, whenever you get really tired, I mean, like not kind of tired, when you're 10 hours into something, or you're 14 hours into something, there is something that hits you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't control it.
Yeah.
And I was pretty emotional. I got done. I got up at 3:30 next morning and rode again. So it was a lot of miles in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
On 3 separate rides that probably shouldn't have been. I probably should have just put it up and said, "Thanks, Matt. Put your ride up there," and not was worried about it. But sometimes you can commit yourself to be a fool, and I did that day.
Well, and it actually changed the game a little bit for you moving forward, right? That's when you started doubling up your recording, right?
Yeah,
I felt like that was a Garmin thing. No offense to Garmin, but that was a Garmin thing. And then I know you ended up getting a Roam, and then doing. I remember seeing pictures of you had more bike computers on your top tubes than than you needed, but you weren't going to miss a recording.
No, I wanted to make sure it was right, and I did switch. I think that like you said, no offense to Garmin, the Wahoo has been very nice. It's been consistent and it hasn't dropped anything. But I don't trust anything right now. I go ahead and use Strava on my phone just to have as a backup. And until it's uploaded and saved from the Wahoo, I've got it going on the Garmin. And sometimes I'll forget. I mean, I've got it going on my phone. I'll sometimes forget, leave my phone on and drive to Woodbury, and I'll have a bunch of miles, but that always gets deleted. But I definitely double record just to be safe, because it's a stress that I don't want to deal with. And I did that on some of the bigger rides. That was important too, because I wanted the big ride in there, but I also wanted to make sure I had something backing it up. And the rides to Chicago, and the ride to Cape Cod, and the ride and Dirty Kansas, those are all ones that in buck 50, I double recorded those too. Just in case.
What's the biggest ride you've done since you started the Ridestreak?
So I guess 215 was the max. I've had a couple 200-mile days, and I did 2 big trips. One I went to Chicago, and one I went to Cape Cod. And the Chicago trip started with like a 210-mile segment, and I think about 10,000.
And you had never done anything even close to that before that day, too, right? Like, I don't think you'd ridden over 100 miles.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Now I'd done 150s and stuff like that, but I'd never done 200. And I thought to myself, well, I'll do 5 200 or 4 200-mile days to get to Chicago. Feeling all good about that.
I remember telling you, because I mean, hey, I have no experience with it, but I did say, I was like, dude, I don't doubt that you can bull your way through it. I was like, but your body on like day 3, your body's gonna be like, no. Because stacking up, 15-hour days back to back. I mean, that takes something.
That trip to Chicago, that first day was the shorter of the 200-mile days, and it ended with like a 40-mile climb. And of the whole trip to Chicago, I think probably 10,000 of 11,000 feet of climbing was in the first day. So I really got my money's worth. A year later, I wanted to go to Cape Cod. So I said, well, I did 210. I want to do 215, do something bigger. I picked the hottest 3 days of the year to do it. There was a heat advisory.
Always good planning.
Yeah, it was great planning. And that was going out to Pennsylvania on the way there. And I guess the difference in the 2 trips is going to Cape Cod. I had the second day was a ton of climbing, and the third day was a ton of climbing, and it didn't level out till day 4. Whereas when you got to going to Chicago, once you hit the flatlands, it was like you had no elevation gain. I did deal with like a 10 to 12 mile hour headwind for like 10 straight hours that day, one of those days, which was probably
That's
tougher than
hard, man.
climbing. It just kind of reminds you that you're not that strong. But
Nobody's that strong to fight a headwind that long.
yeah,
What is it? So, I mean, obviously those are massive rides, and I'm not one of these ultra distance marathoner type people with riding. I mean, 100 miles and I'm content as can be, but I know the next day, if I've rode that 100 miles hard, or even if I've done a hard 50 or 60 miler, it's hard to go out and to think about doing even 30 miles. I mean, what is it like getting back on the bike the next day after you've had one of those kind of hard, long days?
it can be tough, but it also feels kind of good. I went and did Dirty Kansas a couple years ago. I guess the last time it was Dirty Kansas. Now it's Unbound. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Down
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
it was the last time it was that. And then, so we went out and did the 200-mile version. That was a long day. And the next day I was going to drive back east, and I got up and did my 30. And it's you're certainly sore. The undercarriage is not doing so great. For me, my neck, that takes a big toll of it. But usually after about an hour of it, I feel a lot better because I've kind of loosened everything up.
Sure.
And it feels better. And then in that situation, I got right in the car and drove for 10 hours. So I think that's probably the worst thing you can possibly do, would be just get in the car and drive. But it's, obviously you go slower on those days. But it's consistency is freedom sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just another day. And I don't have to give myself options. And it feels good to be consistent. So.
Yeah, I've told people about your streak, and I don't think that you get enough credit for just how many of these 30-mile rides, which, it takes you, you're not going out there and averaging 20 miles an hour every time. And so a lot of times it's around a 2-hour, just ballparking, a 2-hour ride. And where you live has a lot of topography, it's rolling and the hills are punchy. I know it well. And, when you look at your Strava stats, sometimes it's mind-boggling how, obviously your days ridden are the same, but it's the amount of miles are good. I think, did you do almost 13 or something this year? Is that right? Somewhere like that?
I think I was a little lower this year because we didn't do any big rides this year. Didn't do any go out somewhere. So I think I was 12,500 this year.
I mean, which is big miles. Like, that's big miles, especially for somebody who's not doing, a couple days a week doing a 4 or 5 hour ride. Like, that's when most guys get the big mileage for the year. And then the other thing that you do is just, you climb a lot. Like, you have big climbing numbers, and it's because every ride for you is getting 2,000-3,000 feet, right? Like, every single ride.
I haven't gotten it. I haven't hit. I know there's some friends of mine that get like 1 million feet of climbing in a year. I usually am more in the 850,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah.
So after 6 years, that puts you, you're in the 4 or 5 million feet of climbing.
You've gotten over Everest once or twice. I mean, it's impressive. You tell me about this Iceland trip, because your family was going to Iceland, and you were worried about the trip and the travel because you can't miss. I mean, it's not right around the corner. What did you do to kind of make sure you got your ride in and both ways?
Well, so part of it was my wife, she's been very supportive in all this, and it's not easy for her to have another love in my life that I do every day. But she looked at Iceland and thought, this is a place where people cycle. It's a cycling friendly place. And that's part of the reason we picked it. It was also not very expensive to get over there. once you get there, it's pretty expensive. But starting to plan for that was complicated because, you know, you don't really want to trust anybody with your streak. You want that to be on you. You know, if something messes up, I want it to be my fault. So I looked at the options out there. There was you could get a folding bike, and I looked at those. I looked at maybe buying a bike when I got there, renting a bike when I got there, but those all relied on, you know, buying a bike when I got there, renting a bike when I got there, relied on too many variables. There was just too much unknown, and I wanted to be able to get there and ride because I did not want to have that miss. And I didn't really think I wanted to be doing this on I don't know what the folding bikes are. I think they're like a 20 or 24 inch wheel. Yeah. And that's one thing to ride around the town, but if you're doing 30 miles every day, that's a whole different deal. So I ended up getting a Surly traveler's check, which basically has these couplers in the frame. So it comes apart into two separate triangles and it goes into a suitcase size box. And I'd never built up a bike before. I'd worked on bikes some. I'm not a great mechanic, but it was a fun process to build a bike up. And I also knew that if something broke, I had a good shot at like fixing it because I was the one who put it together. So we packed it up. I rode in the morning before we left. I guess we had a red-eye flight, and when we got there, the bike got there, which is huge. Nothing was broken, which is also huge. But they have a room right outside the airport to build your bike up. So I went out there, and the first hour I spent there was putting my bike back together, and it took me a long time because I'm not very skilled. But you know, I wanted to make sure it was important that they had the bike rack there. I was worried about that on the car, but they had that, and we did the ring road, so we went all the way around. And I kind of every place we went, I would ride. And one thing that was kind of cool during the summer was it didn't get dark. Yeah. So there were no lights.
Yeah. You're like, this is awesome. I can ride whenever I want.
It literally
1 o'clock, it's fine.
It literally did not get dark. There were a couple of places there that were some pretty crazy, some crazy climbs, because you'll find yourself in kind of a valley in between two tunnels that you can't go in the tunnel because it's a one lane, two-way tunnel that has like a pull-off for someone who's going the wrong direction. So you don't go in there. But I found myself doing some pretty crazy climbs, and most of the time there it was like 40 degrees and raining, which is pretty consistent. And you know, it was also beautiful and inspiring. But you kind of got used to that kind of weather. But it was and we got back and spent the last couple of days in Reykjavik. I got to go by and see the Lauf people because I just was interested. They were actually having a gravel race the next day. And my wife told me we could stay, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make that happen. It did sound like it was a really cool race that they had, but I just hadn't planned on it. And then I packed up the bike and we got back home. And luckily there were no major issues trying to get a wheel fixed or, you know, getting a luggage lost, which it was literally something that was stressing the entire time we were flying. It was my bike out there. Where's that? Hoping they had it on the plane.
Get off the plane, go knock on some house door, be like, I need a BMX bike. Can I ride your bike, please?
I mean, I'm not I'm not the kind of person who would have the confidence to do that, but I would do that. I would have no problem saying, hey, can I borrow a bike? And I've also known that I would have no problem riding like a kid's bike if I had to make it. Make it happen.
You know what you need to do? You need to go get $100 bill and fold it up and put it in your ride kit, you know, and that way, you know, if you ever need it to like borrow somebody's bike for $100, you'll have the cash and be like, look, man, this thing's been in here for 10 years and you're just the guy for it. I need this bike now.
Yeah.
Well, what's next? Colin? I mean, you're going to ride, and it's snowing there. We people don't understand, but like it snowed today. I noticed that in the last week, I've seen you ride twice at 1 a.m. In anticipation of the poor weather that's coming. You know, I'm mad at you. I'm not gonna lie. You need a fat bike with studs on the tires because it'll keep you safe. And I'm feeling like I gotta like get you one and just like send it to your house. But I've been asking you to get a fat bike for a couple of years. Like, are you finally there right now today? Like you'd like, man, I'd really like to have one.
There are a lot of things that I want to own, and a fat bike is not one of them.
But you
What
said your biggest fear is ice.
Yes,
Studded
but-
tires on a fat bike. I mean, you'd be having a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I feel my mountain bike's got pretty big tires on it.
Yeah.
And I have thought about studded tires.
Yeah.
The tough thing is you use them 2 or 3 times a year.
You love having them though. When you have them though,
You would. I don't know how much I would trust them either. I don't have any experience with them.
yeah,
The mountain bike does pretty well. I don't know what I have on there, but they're pretty knobby, pretty big tires. One thing that's been a change is we moved off campus most recently. So last year I was on Woodbury's campus, and this year we're here in Ruckersville. And it's a big difference because Woodbury is very good about getting their campus plowed.
cleaned. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And basically there I could ride my 30 miles on campus and it was no big deal. Now that we're away from there, there's a lot more variables. And that's kind of why you see me riding at strange hours to avoid the chance of ice or the chance of snow.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I've got to take a look at the temperature and see what happens and see if we're going to get a freeze tonight, which I think we are.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can avoid that. I will say that I think Trevendale's opening up the gate for Pentani
Yeah. I heard that.
on the 13th. It's going to be like a window to ride. And I don't know if tomorrow's the day to do it, but I'm not going to lie to you. I thought about that. It would be pretty epic. Pentani's a
Yeah. Tell
crazy
people
gravel.
about Pantani if people don't know.
It's hard to describe in some ways, but I guess their motto is up, up, up. It's not a super long ride. I think it's only like 48 miles, but there is a lot of climbing in there. And obviously it's not commemorating, but it's just recognizing that Pentani loved to climb. And there's some 20% gradient gravel climbs in there. And
That's fun.
I have not ridden the whole thing without walking yet. It's embarrassing to say, but there are parts in there late in the ride that you just get off and you walk, and there's a guy riding next to you and he's not riding any faster than you're walking.
Yeah.
And somehow you convince yourself of that. And it's during the winter. So, I mean, it's in February. So people generally aren't in that good shape and the weather is terrible.
Yeah.
I guess 4 years ago, I think it was about 11 degrees, and that was no joke because I'd ridden plenty in cold weather, but I had not done that much descending in cold weather.
Yeah. It was
So sweating and descending, all of a sudden my jacket was frozen. The zipper was frozen solid. There was nothing going in there. I had a water bottle inside my jacket so I could still drink. But that's kind of what to expect. And I don't know. I'm not sure if it's possible tomorrow. I guess anything's possible, but I have thought about it.
So what kind of, tell us about your bikes. What kind of, what's your fleet looking like right now?
So I don't know if I'm sure other people do this, but it's kind of hard to get rid of your first.
Still
I
got
did
mine.
move on from my very first, that Cannondale 29er. I ended up with a specialized stump jumper, which I like an awful lot. I use that for mountain bike practice. Also, obviously, I ride it here when it snows. I like that. I've got 3 diverges. My first diverge is still in working order. It was one of the aluminum ones.
Things
And
like a battle tank. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I liked riding that bike. It was a good purchase. I went into town. I test drove it, and I said, okay. I called my guru. I talked to Matt. I think he made me consider a carbon version, but ultimately said, it's probably not going to make that much difference to you. I'm glad that he did, because you always want to have a way to upgrade, and that's where I was going next. But I've got that bike, and that bike's got about I think it's got about 32,000 miles on it. And then my second diverge was, I guess, the first one with the Future Shock. And I rode that. I put about 35,000 miles on that. They warranted, so they cut the frame, and I've got the frame there, but I've got a new 2021 Diverge, and that's got about 5,000 miles on it right now. And that's obviously my everyday rider. I got 38s on there and tubeless, and it's pretty comfortable. And that's what I ride pretty much all the time. The roads around here, you know what they're like, a lot of potholes and stuff. So having some compliance is nice. Probably my most fun bike to ride is a Tarmac I got from Bicycle Gallery down there. Sean set me up with that. I love that. I think that's a 2016 maybe.
16, yeah.
Yeah, it's got about 10,000 miles on it, but that's the most.
You were like
fun
the
one
first
to ride.
guy I knew that had like digital, they had DI2. I was like, that was when everybody had it. And I thought you were just big balling. You were just like, I got the Tarmac with the Ultegra DI2, and you babied that thing, man. You wouldn't ride it in the rain. It was like your special, and you just beat the Diverge to death in service.
What do you mean? What do you mean wouldn't ride in the rain?
No, you still don't. I know.
It's interesting that the electronic shifting, I'm sure people say, well, that's silly. Why would you need that? And the answer is you don't need it. But if you think about mechanicals that I've dealt with. One of the things I have dealt with on a decently regular basis is broken derailleur cables.
Yeah.
And I am not a skilled mechanic. It takes me a long time to get stuff fixed. So
Sure.
Having the DI2 makes that part much, much easier.
Yeah.
The school that I teach at is a 6-day-a-week school. So there's a couple of things that you really can't do when you work where I work. Go to the doctor, go to the dentist, go to the bank, or go to the bike shop, because I'm basically working every time those places are open, or coaching. So anytime I can have something that's better for not going to the bike shop, and that's a benefit of the DI2. You asked about what was next. I know we've been chatting a little bit about it. The plan is that not this summer, but next, to do the Tour Divide. That'll be something that's very much outside my wheelhouse. I don't do a lot of camping. I certainly have never ridden 2,700 miles, and I don't know what it is. It's maybe like, was it 200,000 feet of climbing? That's a lot of days in a row. But I'm excited about it. It seems like a good challenge. It seems like something that I could do. And sometimes when you think about doing something, you just got to go do it. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm planning for next, is a Tour Divide, not this summer, but next.
There's still chance that you can convince me to do it. I'm just saying, I'm leaving the door's cracked open just the tiniest bit.
I'll wave at you guys when you finish, or when you leave and when you come back. I will not be doing it.
Yeah.
Well, you've inspired me quite a bit, and I hope that other folks, see what you do and know that, like, when my wife asks about it, I always try to say, like, I don't want to do what Colin is doing, but I have so much respect for what it is that he's doing that I think, people need to give it the credit that it deserves. Not that you're doing it for publicity or you're doing it for anyone else other than yourself, but the dedication that it takes and the stick-to-itiveness of it is really good. But the thing that I found recently, because I have the hardest time, and Jordan knows this, he experiences the same thing. I can fall off the bike wagon, like, really quickly. And I still ride, but I'm riding like once a week, twice a week. And it's just not enough to maintain any sort of balance or, or fitness or whatever. But recently I kind of was thinking about what it is you do. And like, okay, like, when you boil it right down to it, it's just like you ride every day for 30 miles and that's basically it. That's all you do. But those are the hard and fast rules. And so I try to implement that myself and give myself something that I could stick to. And I said, okay, I'm going to ride 5 days a week for an hour. Now, I don't have the same restrictions. Like I can ride on Zwift. I could, ride a unicycle. I don't know, whatever. But like I just said, I'm going to do 5 hours. And at first it was hard. At first it was really hard because I was just trying to like get back into some sort of routine. And there's many days where like in the land of dadness and Ridge Supply-ness that like I could come up with a million excuses why I shouldn't ride, but I did it. And I've been doing it now I'm coming up on 2 months, and which is not impressive. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that just having simple rules and then following simple rules is the thing that is so inspiring. Like we all could use that. Just kudos to you, dude, for it's been 6 years. We're coming up on six years. Like that's a long time. And how old are you going to be to get to 10,000? Like 65, right? 67?
Well, 10,000 is like 27 years. So I guess it's like 21 years from now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So you'll be 60, you'll be 68 or 67. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I think so.
I mean, we're the same age. I'm not trying to, shame you. I was
will
just
be
saying,
67. We will be 67.
Yeah, we will be 67. I will have a ride streak of like 2, and you'll be clicking over 10,000. But I hope that we're both still riding at that point. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that, I love riding my bike. I mean, to me, when I first started riding, I would listen to music. It was guaranteed. I put one earphone in one ear and leave my left side open, which maybe that's not the appropriate thing to do, but that's what I did. And I wouldn't ride. I mean, I would ride, but I basically always had music. I listened to it all the time. I had a playlist.
Yeah.
And then after 100 rides, I just said, no, I'm done listening to music. And to me, it's like meditation.
Yeah.
And it keeps me balanced. It keeps me happy. And that's what it's become to me, is this like, energizing activity that lets me think and meditate and deal with everything in my life, and come out feeling like I accomplished something and feeling good about myself. It is nice when it inspires people.
Yeah.
That's probably the coolest part. You convinced me to do some Instagram posts a few years ago, and that's been fun. And the coolest part about that is being able to share with my friends and people that care, but also people saying, hey, that got me up this morning to ride. And like, that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Because if somebody else is motivated by what you're doing, that's fun, because that felt good to them.
You never know who's watching.
No.
You never know who's following along that doesn't ever say anything, but like, and not that you're doing it for them, but that's why the posting of it is really cool. I think you came to visit me at like 996 or 997 or something. And we had this discussion, and you were like, I'm not on social media. And I was like, dude, you got to get on Instagram. And, I actually created your account. I created your account on your phone for you. And I was like, dude, we're calling you Ridestreak. And,
Yep.
and you were like, I don't have time. I don't know what to do. I was like, just take a picture and put the number up there, and that's it. And darn if you haven't done that for the last, 1,200 and counting rides. And I love it. I love it. I see it every day. It's like, this reminds me of the people that follow Ridge Supply, or that I follow, that are in Australia. God bless them, but they're ahead of us. They're living in the future. They're living in the future, and they're crushing right now. They're crushing their Saturday. They're up. They're just getting up. They're hard charging, and here we are. We're struggling through Friday. And I love that. It's an inspiration. You never know. Like, maybe we all have to inspire people in the past. I don't know if that's the way it works, but kudos to you for doing it. Are you going to stop at 10,000? You're not going to stop at 10,000, right? Like,
I don't think so.
you're going to die riding your bike, right? Like that. I mean, that's basically what's got to happen, right? You're going to have a heart attack at like 99, or something.
You never know what the future leads, what the future has. There's a guy, Jim Langley. He's a guy who's done something similar. He had a similar streak. He's been doing it for a lot longer than I have. He has different rules.
Yeah.
But but I think he was, I can't remember how many years he was in, but he might've been like 3 years into his or maybe longer. And he had an accident and was injured and missed a couple of days. And then he just started again.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
that could happen. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, you know, you just kind of, that'll happen. And you just got to start over again.
Have you met other people that have streaks going? I mean, do people reach out to you and tell you what they're doing, or?
You know, there's really only a couple
people
that I know about. And I think you know, most of them. There's
I mean, I know about Chris Scott, you know, who's, is that the right name? Down in Roanoke?
he's a coach in Roanoke. I don't know
Yeah.
his first name.
Yeah, he's an Arsenal guy too, and he's a little bit behind you.
Yeah.
And I love what you said a couple years ago. You're like, I'm really happy for him, but he's never going to catch me. And I love that. I love that. That's a great attitude. But he's doing a similar thing, but I think his is like 20 miles.
Yeah, I think his is 20 miles. I don't think.
But he's not that far behind you. He's, you know, a couple hundred rides behind you. But I think he started in 2015.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know, we didn't talk about the specifics of his. I didn't know his was 20 miles. I thought, but you never know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Jim Langley, there was kind of a group of 3 people that were doing a streak. Cause I got online and looked and see, is there anybody else who's doing streaks? And
yeah,
there was this, there was a video that they made, and it basically said there was this guy, Jim, and his rules are that he has to get up and kit and he has to go out and ride. He doesn't have rules on how long it's got to be, but he's ridden a lot, and he's done a lot. There was someone who'd run 1 mile every day since like 1972 or something. No, maybe that was 64. But his average was something crazy. So he was running like at least 1 mile, but he was running like marathons and all kinds of other crazy stuff. Then there was another guy that had surfed 3 waves a day since 1972. And some of the
yes, that's a good streak right there.
It is a good streak.
It's Chris Berry, and he's done 1900.
Chris Berry, yeah, I don't know why I said Chris Scott.
Yeah,
1900. He's at
1900.
So he's almost a year behind
today.
you.
And then the other lady, Lycra and Lace, you probably follow her.
Yeah. She
does
has a streak.
I think so.
Oh,
She
I didn't know
did.
that.
It's pretty long. She does indoor stuff too, because she's in Michigan. But it's no joke.
Yeah.
I mean,
Would you ever consider changing the rules for your streak? Meaning, obviously it's your streak. You don't have anybody to compare to anyway, which is, you know, so it's kind of up to you. But like, I would wonder if you got injured, let's say, and you could ride a trainer, but you couldn't go outside, you know, would you change? I don't want to give you a worst case scenario. I just was saying,
that happens. The things I thought about mainly would be, who do I know that has a tricycle? You know, something I could ride without having to steer with 2 arms. You know, but I hadn't thought about that. The things I had thought about, I thought about some really foolish things like upping the limit, you know, upping the minimum, you know, saying, okay, why wouldn't you just do 40 a day?
Right.
And then I also thought about trying to do a run streak along with it, so that I ran, you know, a certain number of miles every day when I rode. There was, you know.
Man, you gotta watch out. You can mess around and become a triathlete. Oh.
Well, yeah, then you have to get in the pool.
I know.
I think I'd have to stick to a duathlete or something like that. But I have thought about it, and obviously there are things you can't control.
Yeah.
All I can really control is my mindset and what I'm willing to do. And I think that.
Well, you know, too, like, I don't know. I don't mean to keep bringing up things like rules, because, like, honestly, it's irrelevant. Like, just the fact that you're doing it and you have this streak now, it's like, you kind of have to enjoy the process. You're not going to have some big party that's at 10,000 that's going to make the world all better. You know, like, every day that you continue this streak is awesome. And like you said, your life has changed. Like, what I think people are inspired by is, like, you changed your life. You know what I mean? The bike changed your life. The streak changed your life. and some of it for the worse, some of it for the better. You know, nobody wants to get up at 1 a.m. and ride in the rain, you know, but the choice to do that because it's the best possible time for you to ride is, I think, a fascinating part of, you know, the living your best life kind of vibe, right?
I would say the one thing that the streak has taught me, I'm very much like a destination guy. In other words, if we're taking a trip somewhere, I want to be there. I don't want to look out the window. I don't want to see what's going on. I want to be there. If I'm coaching a game, I want to finish. I want to win the game. And what the streak has taught me is that that's not, you know, you got to slow down because you can't speed it up. You get one ride a day, and that if you ride 10 times in one day, you still only got one ride one day. So it's kind of taught me to enjoy the process, to enjoy the journey more, and that's a hard lesson to learn. I'm also realistic because when you look out there are whenever you think you're doing something that's unique or something that's challenging, all you gotta do is look around the corner and somebody's doing something that's 10 times as hard.
Sure.
I think about like Amanda Coker. Do you know who she is?
Is she the one that rode in Florida or whatever?
Yeah. She broke the distance record.
I can't even fathom it. It's insanity. She ride
rode,
like 7 hours a day or something like that for a whole year.
No. The record was like 76,000 miles in a year, set by Kurt Siervogall. And he rode with her one day and said, hey, you know, you could beat the women's record. And the women's record was like 36,000 miles in a year or something like that.
Yeah.
She rode like, she rode 86,000 miles in a year.
Yeah.
She rode in 1 year what I rode in 6 years.
Yeah.
She was riding like 200 miles a day in a park in Tampa, a 7 mile loop,
7 mile
in a
loop.
park in Tampa, Florida.
Holy moly.
And you say, well, good grief. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also realistic that, you know, ultimately I'm just riding a bike. And there's always someone who's doing more. And, you know, I think it's more about how you feel about yourself, and doing what I'm doing feels good to me. And that's really why I do it.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to be able to do it. You know, I've had lots of support. You know, you've given me a lot of support, information that I listened to, information I didn't listen to.
A lot more that you didn't listen to, but yes, that you're a smart man. You're smarter than I am. Yeah.
But things that changed my trajectory, you know, just it's nice to have people, you know, being part of Arsenal, that being part of a team.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a professional cyclist. You know, that's not who I am, but I can feel pro, you know, that feels cool. Yeah. I can have nice kit stuff. I can, you know, being part of that, the Ridge Rodeo, getting the jersey and stuff like that. That felt good to be part of that. And those kind of things are motivating, but it's definitely nice to have support from people. I definitely had that. So,
yeah, man. I mean, Jordan, do you have anything else? I could talk all day long about the geekery of this.
We both could, because I'm fascinated by it, but no, that's pretty much.
I just want people to know that they can follow you on Instagram and they can follow you on Strava. It's Ridestreak, or on Strava, you just Colin Gay, right? Yes. So, and Colin's in Central Virginia. We hope to. I haven't seen you in a while. We haven't ridden together. We're like everyone else, though. We're planning. Jordan and I have been. We've we got a million plans. When we can actually get together and ride bikes, it will happen. So I'm looking forward to being part of those 30 miles in the 2,500 range or whatever it ends up being. Yeah. I get to get back at it.
Yeah. So.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I'm going to look forward to Tour Divide, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I got to get some bags or something. Or
I'll be cheering.
Yes.
I will not be there. Well, I might be there, but I will not be riding. I'll be cheering.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was great to talk about this stuff, and thank you.
Yeah, dude, stay safe. Get some studded tires. I'm gonna talk to Cole up there in cold land who rides the studded tires all the time and figure out what to do, because I'm sure you can get some studded tires for that mountain bike. I mean,
yes.
Oh yeah, you could.
Yeah,
Yeah, you could.
might as well. And flat pedals and studded tires for those days when it's sketch.
Yeah.
It'll make me feel better.
Yes.
Is Bar Mitts sponsoring you yet? Because you, dude, you've
I was
run
gonna say.
those Bar Mitts, man. Woo! They've saved you.
It's funny. It's funny because you look at those things and they look kind of silly. And I've had people say, "Oh, they're dangerous. Oh, they're dangerous." I'm like, well, what they're dangerous about is keep my hands warm.
Yeah.
You think about having the proper gear is important. And then I also realized that, when I started doing this, I was wearing a sock and a sandwich bag and a sock.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's how I rolled. And probably needed to do that to learn what not to do. But those bar mitts are a game changer. I can wear hand-up gloves in those down to like 18 degrees.
That's crazy.
And, my hands aren't cold. And when it's
Yeah.
raining in 33, that is the only thing that I found to work. But yeah, they're not sponsoring me, but I do try to give them a lot of love because they give me a lot of love. So
Is there anything that we can do, kit wise? Is there something you're missing? Because I know you have a lot of stuff and you go through it a lot, but I noticed that you're still rocking some things that you've been wearing them for 4 or 5 years, like they got to be wearing out, like that orange Specialized jacket you've got. That thing's seen some miles.
yeah, I tried it. I just got a new one. It's Velocio. I'm not saying that name right.
Yeah, no, you are. You're saying it just perfect. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I just got a new jacket of theirs. It's nice. It's not quite as warm as the Specialized jacket. But I mixed that in there a little bit. It's one of those things where once you figure out something that works, you're kind of hard to go away from it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff I've got has been pretty durable. I am looking at some new, maybe some new bibs. I talked to Joe Hoskins. You set me up with him talking about the Tour Divide, and he mentioned some of the Accessos bibs, and they have like a little bit different technology for their chamois. It's supposed to be sweet. So I might be trying some of those on in the near future, but I don't think so. I think from what I had, this the mesh shorts and the boxer shorts and the t-shirt, I remember you trying to tell me I needed more than one helmet. And I was like, what are you talking about? More than one helmet?
I'm like, the inside of your helmet is disgusting.
Yeah.
Give it a break. Like,
yeah. I expanded on that a lot. But I don't think I really need anything right now. Maybe some fresh legs.
Yeah. Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I bet your Strava, like, your fatigue score is like 2000 or something like that.
It's not good. It's not good.
Well, thanks for coming on, bro.
Glad to have you.
Great to see you. Be safe today, and we'll see you out on the road, man.
All right. Thank you.
Peace.